Okay, so I'm recording this so you guys can feel free to take notes or just rely on the recording that I'll send later. But I'm really excited about this, and it seems like this has just kind of come together with a bunch of people thinking of starting a business and asking me for advice, and I just figured, hey, let's be efficient about this and do it in webinar format. So I hope this works well for you guys, and I'm kind of excited. I think just a 4-week period of putting things in the order I think that they should be done will help eliminate that intimidation factor and kind of just get you started on the stuff that matters and ignore all of the other stuff that everyone thinks matters that doesn't. I think there are a lot of things that people get intimidated by, including the idea of, several $1,000 websites and who knows what long list of things they think they need to do. And I've never, ever started a business on less than 10 or 20 bucks. So I thought I would just kind of start things out that way and give you a list of stuff that I think would be helpful, maybe give you some homework that you could do this week that is easily attainable by the time we talk again next week. Sound good?
Works for me.
Sounds good.
Cool. Let me just change this to full screen. How do I do that? Okay. So just a little bit of background about me. Some of you have heard this already, but I've been self-employed all my life, starting when I was 12, when I had my first paper out. And I got introduced to sales when, by the time I was 14, I built up to 3 different paper routes, and I convinced we were all kids delivering papers, and I kind of convinced my route manager, who was the only adult who, the papers would get delivered to the adult's house. She would supervise all of us and send us on our way. And I realized I was really good at delivering papers. I hated folding papers. And I talked her into just folding my papers for me, and I paid her to do that. And I showed up and built up to 4 routes because I was just really good at delivering them. And the funny thing is, the only pay job I ever had was in high school, and it was kind of because I was getting too old to be a paper boy anymore, but it was an actual pay cut. And honestly, I think that was my sign that being self-employed was going to be what I would do for the rest of my life, because it's the only industry where you're completely in charge of whatever you want to be. You can work as much or as little as you want. If you really apply yourself, you can earn as much or as little as you want. And you just, in my experience, you don't get to do that with most jobs. So that is what kind of paved the way for me for self-employment. My grocery store job lasted till I went off to college. And then from then on, everything I've done, I've built and sold 2 businesses. My 3rd business, I still have because it pays well, and I'd be crazy to get rid of those clients. And my 4th business is almost 2 years old, and it hit all signs go after about 12 months. So I put together a list of things that I've done that have worked for me, that I thought might be helpful for you guys. So I personally think the biggest thing when you get started in any business is just making it as legitimate as possible. And when I say that, it really means just get a domain. You don't need to build a website yet. But what you do really need is a business name, a domain name that matches that. And the main reason that's the top priority is so that you don't start a business that has no identity. You don't have business cards that have a Hotmail or a Yahoo address on them, because people judge that. People, when you hand them a business card, there's a massive difference between Melissa organizes houses at yahoo.com and Melissa organizes or Melissa at melissaorganizeshouses.com. And the crazy thing is it doesn't take a large commitment for that. You can get that domain for $10 a year. So there really is no reason you shouldn't decide to do that. Now, a lot of times people will overthink this and think, well, I got to choose just the right domain. And what if I grow it so big that I sell it to such and such a company, or what's going to have the best SEO? None of that matters. It should be a domain so that you have an established looking email address, and that's it. When I started my most recent travel business, it started as an entirely different name. And the first 6 months, it was joelscheaptrips.com. And as I grew, as I proved that the concept had legs, I eventually decided that, okay, this isn't, my end goal is to eventually sell this business, and Joel's Cheap Trips probably can't be sold. As soon as I stop being involved, that stops being a business. And it took about $50 in programming. So it took $10 to get a new domain, and it took $40 or $50 to a programmer who I said, hey, I just got a new website. Can you copy from the old one to the new one? And it was that simple. And the funny thing is I also, while I was proving it that concept had legs, it wasn't a formal business. I wasn't actually charging for it yet. And once I was charging, I just had them pay me. It wasn't that big a deal. A lawyer might disagree, but in my experience, the domain is easy to grab. It's easy to change if you change your mind. So go ahead and just get started with that, but don't make a big deal out of it. The other intimidating thing that might come up is, oh, well, I don't know how to design. That's going to cost $2,000 to $5,000 to have a website built. And yes, that is what designers charge, usually at a minimum, but that's just silly. Wix.com, Squarespace.com are two excellent out-of-the-box resources that you can go to, pick a domain, buy it for $10, choose a hosting plan, which is $5 to $15 a month, and you can just drag and drop and choose beautiful, beautiful looking websites. For example, if you were to go to Wix, it's as easy as hitting a button, setting up an account, which can be done automatically through Facebook, and just kind of walking through their questionnaire and answering a few questions. Actually, Squarespace is even easier. Thought I had some examples pulled up, but I think I hit reset. But anyway, you can just say, all right, let's go with this design. Let's go with this design. And you just start that way. It's literally that simple. Down the road, once you want to customize, I'll show you how you can do that. But don't let this process intimidate you, because you could literally have a domain, have a registered domain, and a built and ready to go website where all you're doing is filling in the blanks. You're changing the text on the home page. You're changing the text on the about page. You don't have news, so you delete that page. Very, very easy, and and the biggest mistake you can make would be to overanalyze this, overthink this, and keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. Like I said, you can always change the domain. You can pay someone a few bucks to migrate this to a new domain name if you change your mind. But just having that established business from the get-go is huge. Because like I said, Melissa Sells Homes at gmail.com does not look nearly as professional, and it will be judged. People might not say anything, but it will be judged of, oh, that's cute. She's got a little side business that she's not serious about. But I don't know that I'm comfortable using her. Your friends will use you because they know and trust you. But as far as getting outside business, that makes a huge, huge difference. Make sense? Any questions?
Any questions? Nope.
So on one thought, Tamika, you already have a website put together by your company, but the other advantage, I know you bought a domain that you're really excited about using. You could call whoever your support company is and just say, can you help me with two things? I want to set up an email forwarder, and you can set up your email to either forward to your existing account, but at least that way you get to put a legitimate looking email on your business cards. And most providers allow you to mask that email address. So I have a Gmail account for all of my email correspondence. I let Gmail manage that for me, but it appears as though all of my email is being sent from Joel at Just Get Out of Town. And that's really easy to set up. So again, this is all about the appearance of your business. So you can do two things with your existing domain name. You can just call them and say, can you please help me set up an email forwarder? They might do it for you. They might walk you through it, but I don't even know how these companies do this because they charge $5 or $10 a month. And I've spent hours on the phone with them with just free support that's included for that five or $10. So they do, most hosting companies will do a great job of helping you get simple changes like that in place. So you want to get an email forwarder in place, and you also want to have them have a domain forwarder. So you don't need Tamika, since you have an existing website, which is a sub site of your main company site, you can just set that up to forward to that address. And again, that just makes you look more credible because you get to say tamikascompany.com instead of bignationalcompany.com/Tamika. Does that make sense?
Where do you find an email forwarder?
So
who does that?
Every company is different. Tamika is with GoDaddy, who I'm not a big fan of them as a hosting company. But for simple changes like that, you can just call support and ask them. Just say, hey, I want to do these two things, and I can't figure it out on the site. Can you walk me through it? And they will usually do it.
Okay.
Most websites, once you log in, they have what's called a cPanel, short for control panel. And it can usually be pretty intuitive. Like there is a section called email forwarders, and you can maybe follow the instructions and figure it out yourself. But if not, GoDaddy, one good thing about them is they are one of the biggest hosting companies out there, and they probably have some of the most professional support out there. So it should be pretty easy to do. But just those two things, email forwarders and domain forwarders. If you want to sound sophisticated, you can tell them, can you help me set up a 301 redirect for your domain forwarder? And that's geeky language for permanently forward. When someone types in the name, whatever your domain name is, it will automatically forward to any URL you want. I do the same with my website. Justgetoutoftown.com is kind of a long domain to type out. So I'm kind of trying to brand and it's not an acronym, but whatever, JGOOT, JGOOT. So for people typing an email out to me, people want to quickly get to my website, they can just type in jgoot.com, and that redirects to justgetoutoftown.com. So that's almost entirely for my own convenience, because that's what I always type out, as well as my customers' convenience.
Okay.
So like I said, those are the three things you need. And I can't stress this enough. Don't worry about the rest. From what I know about all of you guys' businesses, they're very simple. They're very straightforward. This is mostly just so you have an online presence so customers can go and look you up. But the thing is, most people aren't going to look up your references and your information about your company on your website. They're going to check out your social profile, which we'll talk about next. So so many people think, oh, I got to build a website that's so big and daunting and so many things I got to do. Like I said, you can go to those websites and just pick a theme and say, I like this one. I could change that title to match my company name, and it's good to go. Or you could like everything about the website, and and actually, here, let's preview it. You could like everything about the website and just know that you could change out this picture to anything you want. You could change out these pictures to anything you want. Gosh, those already look pretty good for an organizing website. So you guys could be good to go on that. But like I said, don't blow this out of proportion. That's all you need for now. If you suck yourself into, oh, I got to get this, and then I got to get that, and then I got to get all this other stuff, you will spend months. You could easily spend months tweaking and nudging and adjusting your website, and it doesn't matter. This isn't one of the important things other than legitimizing your business so that you have a legitimate sounding domain name to put on business cards. That's it. And we'll talk about other things you can do down the road later, but don't worry about those yet. And then so the next thing is, as soon as you know the domain name, then you should pretty much know what your business name is going to be. I think it's always a good idea to just have business cards on hand. You are a legitimate business. You're committed to this, so you should have some good-looking business cards to hand out. We're going to cover this in a later section, but I am a big networker. I'm a firm believer that it is 10 times as effective to have other people in your network recommend you as it is for you to recommend yourself, whether that's on word of mouth, whether that's in person, or whatever. I'm a big believer in that. So with that said, I'm going to plug my friend Eric McKeeman. He owns a UPS Brown store. He's maybe 10 or 20% more expensive than Vista Print, but you're going to get personal service, and you'll help out a friend of mine run his business. So you can go to Vista Print and get those sent to you in 2 or 3 days, or you could walk into the UPS store and talk with Eric and have him custom design some business cards for negligibly more than what Vista Print would cost. So that is step one, and like I said, it should be as simple as that. Both of those tasks should take you 10 to 30 minutes, and you have enough to come across as a serious business owner who's ready to go the second you meet someone who might need your services. So priority 2, remember I talked about social proof and other people. Oh, and actually I forgot. I wanted to just give one more example. And this is my website. I'm just going to show my own weaknesses. If you're worried about picking the right business or picking the right domain name or the best looking site, I'm going to give you an example. This is called the Wayback Machine, and it's kind of fun. You can go and research any website and see the evolution of that website, what they look like through the years. And this is a fun one. This shows my first website. I actually started it in '98, but this site didn't pick up my website until 2000. But it takes snapshots of what those business pages look like. So this is my first website. It lasted 4 years. I employed 25 agents. We generated over $100 million in real estate sales, which isn't that much money for 25 agents, but $100 million in sales from this crappy looking website. In fact, if you go and look through the years, this lasted for several more years. I think when we were finally like killing it and had 30 or 40 agents, we finally decided to upgrade our look. And get a more professional design. But the funny thing is, it took 2 iterations with a professional designer who we paid a few $1,000s to upgrade our look and give us a good polished look and feel. And it took her 2 iterations. The first version actually converted worse than this website. So again, if you get intimidated at the idea of a website, don't, because anything you pick off of Wix or Squarespace is going to be 100 times better than this. And I employed 25 real estate agents from nothing but this crappy website. Literally 1 page. We had nothing else. We just had people fill out a form, tell us what they were looking for, and we made tons and tons of sales. So, okay, now moving on to the next most important thing. And the reason I say this is most important is this is actually free, but you don't get to have that established presence. You don't get to have a cool looking domain on your business card. But it's probably more important because the most important thing with this is social proof. Having other people talk about your business, and putting testimonials in a public place. That way, you're not copying and pasting emails from people, because the better your business, if you have phenomenal testimonials, but you just kind of put quotes around them and paste them into an email and throw up a picture of those clients, nobody believes that. You could have made it up. Whereas if you have reviews from various people on a Facebook page from accounts that can't be hacked, I mean, those are real people out there on the web that people could say, gosh, this person loves Melissa. It almost sounds too good to be true. All they have to do is click on that person's name and go and see that they're a real person. In fact, they could reach out and say, hey, I'm thinking of hiring Melissa. You said glowing things about her, but it sounds a little too good to be true. But if you do that in the form of a public review on a Facebook page or a Google reviews page or a Yelp page or whatever, then that adds 10 times more credibility. I forgot this lesson, and I got glowing testimonials from subscribers, and they would email me, and I would say, hey, can I quote you, and can you send me a picture of you? People didn't believe them because I would just copy and paste them into emails or put them on my website. But as soon as I grabbed screen captures of those Facebook reviews, sales started multiplying. In fact, this is a screenshot of new subscribers that I got last month in September. And there is a direct correlation with all of these sales. The most interesting thing is I haven't spent a dime in advertising, well, until last week. I just started some advertising last week in Denver, but I haven't spent a dime in advertising in over a year. But it's my biggest territory by over triple compared to everyone else. And the funny thing is, if you look at these numbers, Denver's triple what almost anything else is. Minneapolis and Nashville don't count. I've done zero advertising there. But New York is terrible. So then take a look at my Facebook pages for each of those areas. New York, I have a total of 1 review. It's also my smallest territory, but I have 4,000 or 5,000 followers on this Facebook page, and I have 1 review, and I had 6 sales last month. Another territory is my Raleigh territory, and I have 23 reviews. And then if you go and look at my sales, Raleigh did okay. It also did okay because I did a big advertising campaign towards the end of last month. But last month I spent probably 5 or 6 times as much in advertising in Raleigh as I did in Denver. Once you look at my Denver page, this is an example of social proof. I have 177 reviews with an average rating of 4.8. I used to put these websites, I would cherry pick the best testimonials and put them on my website. You can go find them. You can still see them on my website, but people don't believe them. They believe these. The second I changed from sending people to my Facebook reviews page from having the testimonials on my website, conversions went through the roof. And I think that's demonstrated best here by just looking at these numbers. I'm currently testing with another method that is nothing but my paid subscribers, and it's 51 people, and we haven't gotten less than a 5 out of 5 star yet. And again, we're seeing even more proof. So the great thing is Facebook pages are free. You can go to free image websites, like I haven't spent anything on design. I went and found a cool picture that I had rights to use in New York. I found a cool picture that I had rights to use in Raleigh. And I slapped that up as the header. I slapped a personal picture of me up, and I've got a Facebook page. It does not take a lot. You do not need to pay a designer. This is completely and totally free, and it just establishes credibility for your business. And when I say beg, borrow, and steal for testimonials, that means, I mean, you're getting businesses off the ground. Anyone you help, if the second they say thank you, you say, thank you, would you mind doing a favor? And you send them a link and say, could you please give me a review? I'm still getting this business off the ground, and every positive review helps. And they're usually glad to do it. If that means doing work for free in order to get the testimonials, there's nothing more powerful. The only reason this is a priority too is because you want to be able to send people to an established domain from the Facebook page. Because somewhere on here shows that they can visit my website. We don't need to spend much time finding that, but it's almost more important than the other stuff, but you kind of need the other stuff in place first. So that's the only reason this is a second priority. Still sound good? I think we're up to a total of maybe business cards plus a domain. You're probably looking at $60 to $100, mostly depending on how long of a commitment you want to do on your domain. If you commit monthly, it's going to cost you $20 or $30 a month. If you commit to annual, it'll cost you $5 to $7 a month to host your domain. So we're talking pretty small amounts so far in both time and financial commitment. Any questions so far?
I do have a question.
Uh-huh.
How do you know that you have rights to the picture?
So there are a few websites out there. My favorite is called pixabay.com. Free to use. If you use a lot of their images, they pop up a little image like, do you want to give this person a tip? And it's completely optional. But photographers from around the world, really, really good photographers, will go and take pictures that you are welcome to use. In fact, I have about 5,000 images that are on my Just Get Out of Town site. 90% of them came from this website. This one or another one, but they're completely free to use. If I use someone, like, if a lot of times there's one artist who has a ton of amazing photos, I'll just throw him a bone and give him a credit, and just put a photo credit in your photo. But you can find anything you want. It's a little bit of a stretch, but I just thought I'd see if I could find something relevant. Hey, look at that. We've got a house cleaner, not an organizer. But I mean, so for me, I can just say, for my travel business, I can just say, find me pictures of Mexico. And I've got a ton of great photos that I can just go and grab. If you're doing this in mass, you can set up a free account, and it's that much easier to download them. But anytime you look at them, you can just download those, and and this website in particular, you have full rights to use these. You don't even need to give credit. Be very careful. A lot of people think, oh, well, I can go to Google Images and there's a bigger selection. You can get in a lot of trouble for that. Like lawsuits from, you can get a letter of demand, I think, from Shutterstock if they happened to be the one that took the photo, and you could owe them several $1,000s. So be very careful about that. But Pixabay is one that I use all the time, and it's a great, great resource. Any other questions?
Nope.
All right. Nope. So step 3, you've got your website or a domain name and a couple pages of a website. You've got business cards. you've got a Facebook page to start driving your happy customers to get reviews. And again, nothing more important than that. Beg, borrow, and steal to get as many testimonials as possible as early as possible. One thing I will say about that, don't just approach your leads group and say, give me a testimonial, because the other thing I will point out is I had 177 reviews in my Denver territory from very happy subscribers that were mostly from my free subscription. This was when I was getting it off the ground. This was when it was a big struggle to get people to part with even $1 for my paid services. Once I changed to asking for testimonials from only paying subscribers, this became a lot more effective. So don't rush this. When I say beg, borrow, and steal, don't get mediocre, crappy testimonials. Get glowing testimonials, and 1 or 2 glowing testimonials is worth 50 mediocre testimonials. This guy changed my business. This is probably my first raving fan, and he is all over my websites, on my Facebook pages. When people say this is a scam, I don't have to say anything. He jumps in and say, no, this guy is legit. You need to listen to every word he says. If I say, please go give me a review, I've said this on like 5 different pages. He's the first one to go and say, Joel has an amazing service. So don't rush that, and make sure to kind of cherry pick those people that you know for a fact will give you a raving review. And all you need is one, and that can change everything about your business. So the next step, and like those first 2 priorities are really the only thing that at the end of this, I'll kind of give you homework that would be a very, very good idea to have in place by our meeting next week. Those are the only 2 things. Everything else is optional extra credit. Typically, and I'm giving this, my first disclaimer is I am not a lawyer. You should seek out legal advice. But in my experience, I start a business, I grab the domain, I run it as though I'm running a business. And the second I start charging someone, that's when I will go and establish an LLC. So if you're already established and already doing that, then go do an LLC, do something to protect yourself, because you never know what can go wrong. You never know when you're going to get an upset customer. You never know when you might, I don't know, do a free, give a free quote at someone's house and back up over their mailbox or knock a tree over or something. And at the very least, you should have an LLC. An LLC is called, it stands for Limited Liability Company. There are varying degrees of business entities. An LLC is the minimum, and basically it should be done very early in the process. My rule of thumb is as soon as I start charging anyone for my services, I establish an LLC. I have them pay that company, and that way, if I get sued, I can say, here you go, here's the company, but they can't touch me if I have it set up properly. And that's where you get a lawyer involved. But for the most part, I typically don't involve lawyers until I've generated at least 6 figures for a business. But starting that is at the very least better than nothing, and it costs $50. You go to the Colorado Secretary of State. You can write down this URL, or you can just Google Colorado Secretary of State. You go to the business section. You go to, well, you could do name availability search, or if you already know the name, go to file a business document. And it's pretty straightforward. At the very least, my recommendation is an LLC. An accountant, a lawyer may tell you otherwise, and you're welcome to talk to a lawyer and get that advice if you have those resources or are willing to spend that money. But my opinion is an LLC is exponentially more powerful as far as protecting you and your assets in case something goes wrong. And it's the cheapest insurance you can get. So again, my rule, the second you're going to charge someone, get an LLC established. And in my opinion, you may as well just do that. If you're comfortable with a domain name, you're probably comfortable with a business name, just go ahead and register it. If you change your mind, it'll cost you $50 to get it changed. Actually, it probably costs less to change it. But It's as simple as that. And then you could just file a form, answer a few questions, and you are officially an official legitimate business owner, which again, adding that acronym, adding whatever it may be, Melissa Organizes Houses.com. It can also be Melissa Organizes Houses LLC, and that's a more official sounding name. So it just, again, makes you look more professional, but more importantly, protects you exponentially more than if you're charging money personally. The second you accept money from a client, you are personally liable if something goes wrong. And that can get really, really ugly. Speaking of getting ugly, so my non-legal advice is LLC is the minimum. Typically, an accountant, not a lawyer, but an accountant would tell you an S Corp is the next step after you're making about $150,000 a year. Before that, it's overkill, and there's more accounting expense than there is in tax benefit. But as soon as you pass about $150,000 a year, that's when you might upgrade to an S Corp. There are a few more hoops you got to jump through, but what you would pay to an accountant is less than what you will save in taxes. Beyond that, I have no legal advice. Lawyers probably have very strong opinions of which of these would be more protective based on the type of business you have. And again, these are extra credit things, a very close second behind domain and business cards. The next thing you should do as soon as you start collecting a few clients and start charging, after your first $1,000 or $2,000 in revenue, it's never too early to have business insurance. It starts as low as a few bucks a month. I personally work with, again, this is someone in my networking group. I vetted her. I interviewed her. She only deals with business insurance. She can do home and auto, but she doesn't really, that's not where her passion is. She loves talking with business owners and, figuring out all the ways things can go wrong, making sure that you're not overinsured or underinsured, and she's a great resource. So if you want to jot that number down, she's a great resource. And again, probably not, it's not mandatory right away, definitely not homework this week, but the second you start charging, the second you're convinced that this is a long-term business for yourself, it's money very, very well spent. By the time I got to 70 real estate agents, I had stopped managing the company. I hired a manager. I stopped reviewing contracts. I hired a lawyer to review contracts. We were very, very professional about supervising our agents and making sure they were doing good jobs. And one of my agents bought a house, gutted it, improved it, resold it, and sold it to a civilian, a non-licensed person. And they had it, and she just wanted all these custom changes. She had like some hideous changes: green shag carpet, some obnoxious color granite in the kitchen, going with an even more obnoxious color tile. So these were all custom changes that cost tens of thousands of dollars. And so they said, well, we're glad to do that for you, but these are all non-refundable changes. In other words, if you back out, we have to keep that money because we're going to have to rip this crap out to get it sold. Fine, no problem. This was like $1.5 million transaction. She had $150,000 in earnest money and change orders in place. She changed her mind 3 days before closing and said, I want out and I want my money back. You can't do that. This is all non-refundable money. Remember that discussion about these obnoxious changes that we're going to have to pay to undo? We're not even profiting off of that $150,000. I don't care. I'm the consumer. I'm always right. I want out. Not only did they sue the agent, but they sued me because I'm the broker and I should have been, or I'm the owner of the company and I should have been supervising this agent and I shouldn't be allowing him to do this fraudulent activity to this customer. If I didn't have an insurance, I mean, so the agent won, I won. But it did go to trial. If I didn't have insurance, that would have been a $25,000 lawsuit for me. my agent it cost his insurance company even more. And it was completely frivolous, but it would have cost me $25,000 to defend myself against nothing I did wrong. The judge literally scolded the attorney for dragging me into the lawsuit and threw the case out. But it cost my insurance company 25 grand. If I lost, in other words, if they proved that I did something wrong, it still would have cost $25,000 to my insurance company, and it would have cost me $1,000 deductible and probably more expensive insurance after that. But I can't stress that enough. The second you think that you're ready to move forward and call this a legitimate business is the second you should call someone for insurance. Okay, so more extra credit. This is, again, we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but for you overachievers out there, this is where you come back and if you get the other things in place and you want to go and polish up that website, you've gathered some testimonials, you want to put a testimonial page together, you want to change your copy and make it more professional and redesign the website, all of that is great, but it should only be done after those first 3 steps have been taken. And even so, if you want to do that, don't mess with this stuff yourself. There is talent out there, and don't hire, well, if you know someone who's a designer who can give you a great price, and I mean a great price, sure, that would be great because you're helping each other. You're giving them some money and they're going to help you put a great website together. But I do not believe in sinking money into design. Website design, I have lots and lots of, from the conferences I attend, from the networking groups I go to, I know lots of people who have businesses, and I've talked to people that have spent $5,000 to $25,000 on nothing but web design, which is just ridiculous. If you decide to go and overachieve and take your website to the next level and have testimonials pages and start writing a blog and publishing content to go after organic search results and getting famous on Google and all that stuff, that's great. But you still shouldn't have to spend more than $100 or $200 to have a designer help you with that. And the secret is a website called Upwork.com. Upwork.com is a worldwide network of freelancers. It's got copywriters, it's got web designers, it's got web programmers, it's got anything you can think of. Probably the most extreme example is someone I found I found her through this network 10 years ago, and she's still with me. She is my best asset ever. I just gave her another raise, and she's up to $5 an hour. And she wants to become a full-time employee. I don't have enough work for her, but the second I do, I'm gonna keep paying her $5 an hour to be full-time with me. And she's been the best assistant I've ever had. 2 years ago, when Michelle and I were getting married, she was saying, oh, we still got to do programs. And we were approaching the 11th hour for our wedding. And we had 1,000 other things on our plate. And at 9 or 10 at night, we were talking about that. Oh, gosh, we got to do programs for the wedding. And she said, okay, so I really like this. Can you whip something up on a Word doc and let's get this off to a printer tomorrow? And I said, no way. That's not my skill set. It's going to take me 5 or 6 hours. I'll be up all night. So instead, we sent a screenshot of, hey, we really like this look and feel. Here are 4 or 5 graphics that we found on the web. Can you put those all together and get us a half-page program so we can take an 8.5 by 11 sheet and cut it in half, and we'll have our program. I sent that to her before we went to bed, and she had something back to me the next morning. We maybe made one revision, but it took Michelle and I all of 20 minutes to send the specs off to this person, and she did all of that for like $20. And I probably overpaid, but we gladly did it because it saved us the headache. So there isn't anything that you can't have done by just asking for it. Put it out on this website and say, hey, I'm wanting to do this to my website. I'm willing to spend up to $100. who is interested, and you will get people from the Philippines, from India, from South America, from Michigan, who are just looking for some side work. They've got amazing talents, and they will help you do anything you want that can be done virtually. So if you want to go take your website to the next level, again, don't do what I did. That crappy looking website I showed you, I taught myself HTML, and this technology didn't exist back then. That was before 2000, the year 2000. And but if I had this resource, things would be a lot easier. I've had programmers, I just wrote out and said, here's what I have my assistant do every day. And I've paid $100 to programmers who just allow me to, instead of 2-hour project for my assistant, I can hit a button and it just all gets automated. So like I said, the sky's the limit on what you can have someone help you do by just bookmarking that page, Upwork.com. And I think that is it. And I cannot stress this enough. Those first 2 or 3 bullet items are all that you need to work with, but I think they're the most important thing. There are plenty of other things that you can do that you can bog yourself down in thinking are priorities, but they're not. Those top 3 things are the first 3 things that you need to establish yourself as a credible business owner, and just plain and bootstrap this thing and just get started the right way, so that people aren't kind of just looking, going, oh, that's cute. Well, when she has more than a Yahoo address, maybe I'll use her, or anything like that. And I can't stress that enough. Just do something. Pick a domain, throw up a website. Let that have the ability for you to have a credible domain name that you can put on business cards, and that's all you need to do. You can always change it later, but doing that can be done this week, and you could be ready to go next week, and be in business by next week. So that's quote of the week. Next week, I've got homework for you, and it's just those few things. Pick a domain. Maybe not register your business. That's a little out of order. May as well just order some business cards now that you've got a domain name, and the rest, again, is optional. But those 3 things, by just doing those 3 things, you'll be ready for next week, because I'm going to have you drinking water out of a fire hydrant next week with advertising methods and ways to get business and all of that type stuff. And if you don't have these other things in place, you'll be farther behind, and it will feel that much more daunting. But if you get those other things in place, this other stuff will be a no-brainer, and it'll just be the next logical step in moving your business forward. How's that sound? Any questions, concerns?
I just have a question about going back to the insurance.
Uh-huh.
How much is that a month about, or does it just depend?
It does depend on the business. I believe Holly's typical minimum policy is $500 a year. And I believe she'll prorate that out into monthly payments, but you're typically getting an annualized, a policy that would be annualized down into monthly payments.
Okay.
If you're a roofer, if you're a realtor, it's of course going to be more expensive than that. If you have big liability issues, like running the risk of falling off of someone's roof, that's going to be more expensive. But I'm pretty sure that everyone in this group is probably going to get away with a pretty minimal policy.
Gotcha. Okay.
I have a question just regarding Facebook and a website.
Mm-hmm.
So is Facebook basically just to get the word out? It's kind of your public face, and then like to get attention to your website. Is that kind of the idea?
We're not even there yet. The business will not come to you in droves from establishing a domain name or even establishing a Facebook page. There's going to be work involved with driving traffic to that, either monetarily or through lots of grunt work. I have my own opinion on that, and we'll get into that later. But this is just
Okay.
this is like getting a phone number. You can get a new cell phone. You have a new phone number. You still have to take out an ad in the yellow pages, or take out an ad online, or start getting active socially to drive people to call that phone number. So this is no different than getting a cell phone. You just have a place to send people to learn more about you. And the only reason for a Facebook page is for that credibility factor, because a testimonial or a review on a Facebook page where someone can click through and verify that that's a real person is infinitely more
Yeah.
powerful than just slapping it up on your website.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Got it.
Cool. Well, how are we doing on time? Ah, cool. So we can wrap this up in under an hour if unless anybody has any other questions.
Nope, I'm good.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Joel.
Sure thing.
Thank you, brother.
Sure thing. Well, I can't wait to hear about your progress. Feel free to email me or call me if you have questions along the way. But I am just assuming you'll kind of get those steps 1 and 2 in place, and then we're going to hit some fun stuff on just cheap and effective advertising and networking stuff that you can do to start getting the word out.
Great.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for sticking around. Let me know if this was the right speed, too fast, too slow, or whatever. And otherwise, I'll just assume that this is working, and I'll kind of try to keep the same format for next week.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think it worked really well.
Good.
Yep, just right.
Yep.
All right.
Great.
Good talking to you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Okay.
All right, thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.